So thanks again for coming. This is one of my favorite things in the world to talk about. I don't think this is working. It told me it didn't recognize the keyboard.
No?
And I said, it's right there.
Because the advanced line is this one here.
Oh,
and
okay.
this is back.
Oh,
This is
that's
backwards.
counterintuitive. Okay, down is up is down. So, you know, despite all of the accomplishments, I don't know whose quote this is, but I love it. Where would we be, right, without our soil? We wouldn't have food, we wouldn't have public health, our landscapes would be flying all over the place. We need soil. This picture on the right was taken by my colleague Peter Donovan from the Soil Carbon Coalition. It was taken this summer in Iowa. And this is how we grow corn in this country. It's as if the Dust Bowl never happened, or that we forgot it happened, or that our farmers are under so much pressure to try and increase their yields and stay on their land that they just farm right up to the rivers again. And you can almost see that soil leaving. And that's in a place in the world where we used to have, 20 foot of topsoil that was left to us as a gift from the buffalo and all the ruminants. And we haven't done a very good job of stewarding that soil. Oh, wrong way. So my presentation is really going to focus a lot on the soil health principles, which are, I think, the most important thing that we could put into policy and the most important thing that we can follow in our backyards, on our farms, no matter what size farm you have, and even on your rooftop or porch garden. These were designed by the NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service that used to be the Soil Conservation Service. And the top 4 were designed by them. And the 5th one was actually brought in by Gabe Brown, who's a really awesome rancher out in the Midwest. And he's connected, we have him in our notes, so if you want to learn more about Gabe Brown, you can look into those really deep notes and find his name and get some links there. So these are the 5 principles: living roots in the ground all year long or for as long as possible. Maximize diversity above the ground in plant species and animal species and below the ground as well, and microbial life. Minimize disturbance, meaning tillage and chemicals and other ways that we disturb soil. There are many, many, putting pavement over top of them, etc. Minimizing bare soil, more about pavement, but also when you don't have living roots in the ground, even if there isn't pavement, your soil basically becomes pavement. So having living roots in the ground is important, and also not having bare soil. So even when you're doing annual tillage, trying to cover that soil up, even if it's not with living roots, is going to be better than leaving it bare. And having animals in contact with soil, and to me, that's everything from microbes to elephants, to cows, to sheep and chickens and zebras. So the sun has an energy budget, and the sun is a really important part of soil health. The sun is how soil gets its energy. It's how the microbial life in the soil gets food. So this is showing you the basic breakdown of the energy budget, and I want to focus on, not that. I'll get the hang of it, give me a second. Okay. That's what I was looking for. You see a little red dot. So we're going to focus on the 50% absorbed energy here. 40 to 60% of this energy is actually invested by the trees into the root system. And this starts to get into understanding transpiration too, this whole sort of circle of life of biodiversity, photosynthesis, and transpiration. We're going to focus more on transpiration in the 6th Soil Series event where we talk about water. I'm not going to talk too much about it now, but it's all connected. So the sun shines, it shines down. When it's on green growing plants, it is investing, those green growing plants are investing most of that sunshine into the energy to feed the soil food web. making the connection of the circle of life, I think, is something, it's kind of amazing to me that we don't do more. I work a lot with kids, and it's something that they're interested in, it's something they're learning about, but then we seem to forget about how important that is. One of the things, when I work with kids, it really scares me and worries me that kids are being raised to think that carbon is bad. We are carbon. Carbon is life. Carbon is not bad. We just mismanage it because we don't understand its cycles. But we can do better. So this is kind of what happens inside of a leaf, right? We're taking carbon dioxide and we're taking oxygen and we're turning that into sugar inside of the leaves. And those little solar cells, those leaves are the first solar panels, right? And if we can maximize solar power in every way, and using green growing plants as one of the ways to do that, we can feed the soil. Going back to this slide, wait. All down in that root system are going to be billions and billions and billions and billions of organisms that are going to eat those sugars made by the sunshine. And that's why this is so important, because that soil life is what is feeding us. So I like to think about maximizing diversity as also maximizing sunlight. The more leaf surfaces we have in different sizes and shapes and throughout the year, the more we are harnessing photosynthesis. And when we harness photosynthesis, we're creating sugar out of sunshine. Elaine Ingham, who's a soil microbiologist and one of my teachers, likes to call those the cakes and cookies. So sunlight brings in sugars, those cakes and cookies, and they feed them through the root system to billions of microorganisms that are waiting for just the right cakes and cookies so that they can bring the nutrients that the plant wants right back to the plant. This map on the bottom right was created by Peter Donovan, colleague from the Soil Carbon Coalition, and these are all available online if you go to the Soil Carbon Coalition website and search NDVI maps. That stands for Normalized Different Vegetation Index, and what that map is showing us is essentially 3 years worth of photosynthesis around Lake Champlain. So using technology on the internet and Google Maps and stuff that's a lot smarter than I am, we're able to capture, we can measure how much sunlight we are capturing in Vermont. And so when I see this, I see opportunity. When I look at those deep dark green places, those are more than likely our conifer forests. So those are photosynthesizing year round, another great reason to have conifers. And those brown areas, some of those are places like Burlington, but some of those places up north, all around that lake in Quebec, those are farms. And so that's showing us how little sunshine is being captured on that farmland. So when I think about the fact that a lot of those farms are probably growing corn for cows, and corn has something like a 65-day window of photosynthesizing, so while it might take longer to build the whole plant, the actual days of photosynthesizing and building root exudates are pretty small. And so that's 65 out of 365 days. So to me, that's an opportunity for 300 more days of sunlight. That's the way I like to look at that. You don't have to know what's happening here except to know that there's a lot happening here. This Juan is going to take us, I think, a little further into some of this sort of stuff, and Jess too. So sunlight captures, the leaves capture the sunlight, turning oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is a problem, right? Too much of it up in the air. It's also capturing, by the way, water, which is also too much up in the air. 95% of our greenhouse gases are water vapor, and only 4% are carbon dioxide. So trapping that, bringing it down into sugar, and feeding that microorganism system, the zoo underneath the ground. Around every single living root in healthy soil, there is this tiny little place called the Rhizosphere. The picture on the left is showing you just how big that might be in an area of a tree. And actually, the more we're learning that that's actually much bigger than that. There are teeny tiny root hairs that little cartoon picture isn't showing us, and they all have this little millimeter area around them called the rhizosphere. And in that rhizosphere, this picture over here that we're looking at on the right, oh, darn it. All these little guys, all these little red guys are indicating bacteria, and the little white guys are indicating fungal hyphae coming in and out of the side. So fungal hyphae, that's the mycelium. Have you heard the word mycelium or mycorrhiza? So this is what's literally holding our landscapes together. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil can have a mile of fungal hyphae in it. 1 mile in a teaspoon. To give you the kind of indication of the togetherness and the connectedness of the mycorrhiza, the mycelium. I like to say that we're building the social mycelium to hold our communities together, because I think we can learn a lot from this really intelligent network of organisms that have been holding our planet together. So it's really exciting to me to think about the life that could be in our soil if we were maximizing photosynthesis, if we were maximizing the conditions for healthy soil and following those soil health principles. This is an indication, just a little map of the soil food web. It's a very, very busy place down there, and if you remove any one thing, it doesn't function well. There are predators, there are vegetarians, everybody is down there, and they're all working together, even when they're killing each other. It's a wonderful place. The more I learn about it, the more I want to learn about it.
Oh my God, I see now. It's even louder where you are. It's way too loud for Roddy. I'm going to move her back.
Okay.
You want to move back a ways?
Are you folks in the back hearing okay, or is it too loud? It's okay. We just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable. Okay. A little further away. Can you still hear me in the back if I'm like that?
Yeah.
All right. So the soil food web, 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, I told you, can have a mile of fungal hyphae. To 75,000 species of bacteria, 10,000 protozoa, a few hundred nematodes, and maybe a microarthropod. 1 teaspoon. Dead soil, otherwise known as dirt, which is sand, silt, and clay, isn't going to have any of that. And the kind of disturbance that can kill these guys, fertilizer, tillage, any kind of fertilizer, in too high of an amount is going to kill these guys. So it's no wonder that our soil is dead. So can we increase living roots in the ground? This is another question. I like to pose questions because I like opportunity and possibility as opposed to a wall of terror. We're facing a lot of problems in the future, but I think if we harness possibility and opportunity, we can get through this together. So I always like to point out, top left, that's a lawn. Your standard single species lawn. If you had a multi-species lawn, even a conservation mix, you might have some deeper roots from the clover in there. And this is 15 feet, right? So these are prairie plants from the west, but we all recognize, gardeners in the room recognize that, right? Echinacea, and that one's lupin. Look at how deep those root systems go. Did you have any idea that they could go so deep? And think about the rhizosphere and the potential for a rhizosphere. And if we had that happening in our soils, when we get lots of rain, they might hold in place because there's billions of organisms and mycorrhiza holding them together along with living root structures. So can we increase the amount of living roots in the ground? Can we deepen our root systems? And if we do that, will we also be deepening our watersheds? Because this is also how we get water into the ground. We can hold our landscapes in place by creating the conditions for healthy soil. And in doing so, we'll decrease flooding and drought, and the potential for wildfires will increase nutrient density. We'll all be a lot better off. So we can do this. I'm not going to read the slide because I hate when people do that. But the one on the bottom I think is really important. You know, who here has an acre of land that you manage? So for every acre of land that you manage, if you could increase your organic matter 1% in the top 6 inches, you could hold 20,000 gallons more water per acre. There's some dispute about that number because what kind of soil do you have? Was it 6 inches or 10 inches, you know, but it's still a lot. So some of these figures are still under dispute because we're learning about them. But the point is we can increase a lot of water holding capacity in our soil by creating conditions which include following the soil health principles. When we don't follow the soil health principles, this is what happens. So this is a picture overhead view of what Long Island Sound looked like after Hurricane Irene. And what you're looking at there are Vermont's farm fields and dirt roads gone.
Connecticut River.
Yep, Connecticut River. So $800 million in infrastructure damage, but not one penny was considered for how much soil we lost and what the value of that was. How do we start measuring that? And is it important? Is it important to hang on to soil that takes a long time to build and that farmers have been working so hard to build? And they didn't know that if they tilled their soil all the time, they might not have the mycorrhizal network to hold it together. We can change the way that water moves through landscapes simply by increasing the soil sponge. By increasing the health of our soil, we can influence the amount of water that infiltrates into our soil and holds in our soil to get us through times of drought. This little cartoon is just giving us an indication that when you have good ground cover, you get a lot of infiltration and not a lot of runoff. So these full jars are showing us runoff, not infiltration. It's a little confusing. On the right-hand side, clearly, if you're all paved, you're gonna lose all the water and it's gonna run off and overfill your jar. And if you have a forest, you might lose a small amount of that water when you get a lot of it and it goes beyond saturation point, but you're gonna be able to hold on to it a lot more. So can we turn our cities from something, oh, what was that? Oh,
There goes.
okay.
Sleep.
I don't know. Can we turn our cities into something that looks more green? And it's happening. People are doing this. There's really exciting stuff happening with vertical gardening and rooftop gardening and more parks in cities and impervious pavements and water catchment. There's a lot that we can do even in our urban areas. And where we are in Vermont, there's a whole lot that we can do. So when we treat water like this on the top right, I think my mic stopped working. We're good.
Just do it close to there.
When we have water like this on the top left, and by the way, that was taken at Thetford Elementary School where I manage the school gardens. And on July 1st, 2017, we had that rain event where we got like 7 inches in a few hours. We had 12 feet of water in our schoolyard above the drain, and it formed the coolest funnel. So I took a picture of it. That basically creates ocean dead zones. When we look at the picture of the Long Island Sound after Hurricane Irene, all of that is headed down to the ocean dead zone, which I just learned is now the size of Connecticut. I was taught it was the size of Rhode Island. It's growing. We can do rain gardens. That one is from up Burlington, Davis Center, UVM. That's just a really cool experiment to catch water coming off of their parking lot, and they're using it to grow plants and deepen root systems. Can we provide more ecosystem services? So this is showing us this little picture here. Just look at the green petals. On the left side, natural ecosystems provide us with all the ecosystem services we need except for crop production. So what do humans do about that? We come into that center panel and we create crop production at the expense of all other ecosystem services. So can we move more toward the one on the right where we're growing crops and we're providing ecosystem services? So what are ecosystem services? Pollination, beneficial insects of any kind. There are 900,000 insects identified on the planet, and a very small fraction of those are actually considered to be pests to humans, and a smaller percentage of that are actual pests to agriculture. Yet, we have killed off, I mean, have you heard of the insect apocalypse? That was all for a fraction of a % of insects at the expense of all the other ones that provide who knows what kind of ecosystem services that we've never even acknowledged. Clean water, clean air, surface water temperatures. These are all different kinds of ecosystem services. Having landscapes that hold themselves in place, ecosystem service. So all the things that we need from this incredible planet that are provided for us that we don't know how to make money off of. Although we keep trying, we're genetically engineering bees. Don't worry about the bees, we'll make new ones. So can we provide more ecosystem services? This is a question we can all ask ourselves on our porch, in our backyard, in our neighborhoods, statewide, etc. Can we start to mimic ecosystems? What would it be like if we mimic ecosystems? I find this picture very inspiring, and below it, look at the beavers. Did we learn that pattern from the beavers? Can we learn any patterning from the beavers? If we had left the beavers alone, and if we could create the conditions for the beavers to come back to manage our water, we might not have such drastic flooding effects next time. Because beavers have been managing water for as long as beavers have been. So can we shift the system to provide multiple ecosystem services like you're seeing on the left? These are actually a lot of Vermont farms, so we're very lucky where we live, but let's not forget, not everybody lives there. And on the right side, this is the kind of agriculture you generally support when you go to the regular grocery store and buy meat or dairy or vegetables. On the left side, and you're buying grass-fed, you can buy all kinds of food and support ecosystem services for the planet. It's all about how the food was produced. Can we measure impacts and outcomes? We like to talk about a lot what's in the left-hand side, and we can calculate damages, but we don't even really do that well enough. But can we start to plan for outcomes? Can we start to plan for more plant available water, stream base flow, purity, groundwater quality, recharge, surface water, etc.? Can we focus on that? Can we put a value on that? And can we begin to hire land managers to produce those ecosystem services that we all benefit from? And not just that we all actually need in order to survive. So following those soil health principles, that's how we do this. And I like to say principles and not practices, because practices limit us. They create barriers, they create tunnels, and we stop innovating. When we hold to principles, there are all sorts of practices we haven't even thought of yet that can help us employ these principles. And I think that's it for me. So I just always like to provide some takeaways. These will be in the notes. I'd like to move on and let Jess come up. Jess, Rubin. Thanks.
Every time can you hear me?
Yes.
Every time I see a presentation of yours, I think I need to follow you around and just learn a lot from you. So much to learn.
You should be able to. So down is.
Maybe the mic is off.
Can you hear me?
Get a little closer.
If it's too loud, just let me know. So before we begin, I would like to, well, as part of the beginning, I'd like to just acknowledge.
Please adjust the mic.
I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Elnu Abenaki, the Nulhegan Band of the Coosac Abenaki Nation, the Abenaki Nation of the Missisquoi, and the Kuusek traditional band of the Coos Abenaki Nation. These are the 4 federally recognized tribes in Vermont. There are also other Abenaki who are not recognized. And just want to honor, they call this land Dakina, Dawnland, and they are living in a place with colonial borders created by government entities called New York Vermont, Canada, and they do not have access to their native homeland traditions in the way that is their inherent right due to these colonial borders and laws. And I just would like to say that because we're here and the mission of Vermont Healthy Soils, growing the mycelial network and creating a new paradigm, part of the work is acknowledging that and holding the reality that there's a lot of pain in the soil here because of the history of those people. And so as we learn how to heal the soil and the water, we're also looking at those relationships and how do we heal our relationship with those living people today and their ancestors. So the overall lens that sounds like we're all aligning with is this regenerative agriculture principle, shifting the burden to the intervener. And as we well know, our species is still trying to figure out how to be a good Earth community member, and we have disturbed a lot of systems that were working beautifully before we got here. And so we are responsible to try to do the best to fix it. When I try to approach that overwhelming task, I go back to geologic time, and I want to acknowledge that there's many different views of creation and forms of time and creation stories that have as much validity as science. I am going to be using the scientific paradigm today just because I found it very helpful in ecological restoration. Those other ways of looking at creation and time are also as valid. So according to that scientific paradigm, life on the planet is around 4.6 billion years old. And the microbes showed up around 3 to 4 billion, and it was a very gaseous and hot and difficult environment for creatures, but these extremophiles were able to live with sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid, and they were able to live and reproduce and make the planet a bit more hospitable as water began to condense. And as they did this, can you hear? Yes? Can you hear me?
Check, check.
Can you hear? Check. I'm not familiar much with microphones.
Check, check. Can you hear me?
Okay, so as the microbes made the earth more hospitable, the fungi showed up, not that long after, 2 billion years ago. And these fungi partnered with the microbes, and they were able to help the earth environment become even more hospitable as water was condensing, and it was only 1 billion years later that the plants showed up. So I, bow to these creatures because they are our ecological ancestors. And so when I think, okay, how do we repair our mess, I look to them, and I say, well, they kind of know what they're doing. How do we align and partner with them? We're going to be diving a little into the OA horizons, which are about the top 4 to 16 inches down. And this is where the highest density of plant roots and soil organisms are, the microbes, the fungi, and plant roots. And one thing I just want to point out is that the fungi bridge the microbes and the plants. And that role is really critical, I believe, in the earth repair work we're doing. So as Kat had mentioned, this sphere around roots is called the Rhizosphere, and it has an incredible capacity, 10 to 1,000 times increasing soil and nutrient absorption and access. And when it partners with fungi, it becomes the Mycorrhizosphere. When we look at the soil food web, it's amazing to see the interspecies communication, the interspecies collaboration. And it's a great model for our community of how we can rekindle and honor the interspecies community that we're a part of. Just a brief dip into the biology of fungi. When you harvest the fruiting body, it's like taking an apple from a tree. The roots of the tree are like the hyphae, and the hyphae are the vegetative structure of the fungi. They are the biggest part of the fungi. They are the part that I will be focusing on. They're where the nutrient exchange networks are, and they're the ones that are involved in a lot of the enzyme releasing, nutrient capture, and healing work. You often may have heard the word mycelium, which is when there's a lot of hyphae, and I won't get into biology of that too much right now. An interesting thing about fungi is they're closer to us than plants. And they respirate like us, they take in oxygen, they release carbon dioxide. However, they have an external digestive system, so they release enzymes ahead of themselves. And one of the amazing things about them is they can take very complex molecules and break them down and make them accessible to life that other creatures aren't able to access otherwise. It's interesting to note that their functioning is very dependent upon water, and Kat had mentioned about water being part of the greenhouse gases, and I've heard that the spores, there's billions of them in the air, actually create surface area for water vapor to gather on, congeal, and return to the water cycle in a more efficient manner. The gist of fungi ecology is that they really provide balanced ecosystems. Just like when we learn to take fungi as medicine for our bodies, and they help return us to balance, so too in the ecosystems. They can decompose and recycle. Their dead life, plants and animals, have a lot of micro and trace nutrients that get released when they die, and the fungi can uptake them and release them back into cycles. Toxins are able to be denatured into benign elements, except heavy metals, and move them around. And as I mentioned before, bridging nutrient networks. They're sort of like the janitors of the earth with microbes, but we don't want to lean on them too heavily. The fungi I'll be just briefly talking about, I'm not going to mention pathogenic fungi, but saprophytic fungi, like these black trumpets on the left, where the they break down cellulose and lignin in wood and absorb nutrients from dead animals, as I mentioned, and plants, and they're the ones that are very capable to heal soil and water. Mycorrhizae are also wonderful healers in partnering with plant roots, and they release a chemical called Glomalin, which was discovered in 1996. We'll talk more about that, which acts like a glue, holds soil aggregates together. They mineralize in organic matter, and they're very helpful in preventing erosion. So we're going to focus on mycorrhizae fungi, and around 90% of plants on Earth are mycorrhizal. And I mentioned a lot of this already. I think what hasn't been mentioned is that they do improve crop yields and can really help restore and rebuild food soil web. And originally, before the Industrial Revolution, before we were disturbing soil, mycorrhizae was everywhere. It's as if the fungi nervous system of the earth has sort of been ripped apart. We have the internet and computers now, but the original nervous system got ripped apart. And so a lot of those natural fertility cycles were disturbed, and we're aiming to recover them. There's two main categories of mycorrhizae fungi based on the way that the fungal cells associate with the plant cells. The arbuscular or endomycorrhizae, which are the ones on the left of this photo, you can see that on the outside is where the, on the right side, they actually penetrate inside the plant roots, and about 80% of the plant families partner with them. And those are the ones you will mostly find in fields, in gardens, in prairies, and they're with most flowering plants. The ectomycorrhizae are more on the surface of plant roots, and those are the ones that more are in the forests, partnering with conifer and hardwood trees. And that's about 10% of the plant families that they partner with. Arbuscular mycorrhizae, as I mentioned before, release this gooey glycoprotein called glomalin. And glomalin is fascinating in that it seals off intercellular spaces and basically allows soil to aggregate, to clump together. And this clumping basically provides a rigid space for hyphae to penetrate through the air spaces between soil and for water to settle in. And remember when Kat showed us that slide on the far left where very little water was leaving that landscape and it was acting like a pool? It was because that soil had a lot of this glomalin in it. And it also is about 30% carbon in organic matter. So it's really, I don't like the word sequester, but it's a way of storing carbon. It helps store carbon and hold it in the soil. When you have well-aggregated soil and rich microbial diversity, as mentioned, you're going to have more water holding capacity, more aeration for some of the microbes that do respirate in the soil, because obviously you want to keep growing soil microbial diversity in the soil. And these nutrient exchange works of the hyphae can take off even more. And of course, erosion will happen less because soil won't want to leave. It has such a great place to stay. So need to know about glomalin. There are small traces of heavy metals, even in healthy soils. And it can actually prevent soil from carbon from decomposing in a century. And when heavy metals are not present, glomalin will actually sort of store carbon in a way that allows soil microbes to slow.
Get your switch, maybe.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
No.
Oh boy. Now? Is it all the way up when it's on? All right, I'll speak loud. So, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Our organic matter is preserved, and it's like a slow release, so plants can access it over a long period of time. As the climate is warming, which we all know, there's increased CO2 in the atmosphere, and one of the benefits of this is that glomalin will actually increase production when we have more CO2, and hyphae will grow more. So it's just so interesting that they're actually almost like helping correct, this anthropogenic forcing of greenhouse gases. And there's the woman, Sarah Wright, who's a scientist in 1996 who researched and discovered glomalin with a team of researchers, had said that the same thing will happen when you just manage soil in a good way, which, go figure. And a longer hyphae, obviously, going to increase the rhizosphere, more water, less erosion, increased soil fertility. So a couple ways that you can easily add fungi to the landscape. You can build hugelkultures. You can take wood, store it on swales, on contours, so you're catching water going down, and you're sequestering or storing carbon, and then you can grow perennials or edible or medicinal fungi in it. You can inoculate mulch in your pathways with fungi, food and medicine, that will also retain moisture and protect the soil microbial diversity that's continuing to grow. You can add mycorrhizae inoculants to places in your community that are clearly more monocultures, such as recreation fields, golf courses, lawns. And when you're planting on your land, you can do dips. The land you tend, you can do mycorrhizal dips of your plants and trees in these mycorrhizal products. Farm fields, they can definitely use this, and actually, farmers, if they use this, will not need to add as much phosphorus inputs or fertilizer inputs, because they're gonna have all of those ecosystem services of the fungi, and in the long term, it'll also protect the watershed health. So very helpful for degraded landscapes. So one thing, when I was on the beach a little while ago, I saw this stinkhorn popping up when I was looking at these sand dunes that were going into the ocean, and thinking about, oh, little sand dunes, like, hang on there. And I saw these little hyphae holding sand particles together, and then little succession of lichens, and then this popping up, and it was like, oh, of course you're here. You're always on the edge of where we're losing ecosystem. And I don't yet know its biological functions, but I was just like fascinating. So what we can do is we can partner with protecting them, no rototilling, don't compact soil, don't over fertilize, use a broad fork instead. Keyline plow, you can sheet mulch. Do enrich your soil with quality compost, add mycorrhizal to roots of species, plant with species that symbiocize, I don't know if that's a word, with mycorrhizae, made it up today. Keep soil covered with cover crop or mulch, and incorporate charged biochar. Biochar works wonderful with fungi, creates surface area. When you charge it up with urine and other compost teas, it's amazing. So I'm just gonna briefly touch on, how much time do I have? None?
Yeah, right.
All right, we're gonna go through this in a second. Bioremediation, using microbes, microremediation, using fungi, phytoremediation, using plants. It's all about chemistry. Basically, the fungi recognize a toxin and you partner with it. Fungi know how to break down lignin and cellulose. Trees, petroleum, guess what? It's a hydrocarbon. It's also a CH bond. And that happens with all these other species. So there's a whole system of how you do it, just matching up things and creating substrate. And be careful with heavy metals, because those are ones that are more complicated, but you could do it with hydrocarbons. And and pathogens and excess nutrients like phosphate and nitrate. I think in this watershed you have too much nitrate going in. Where I live, we have too much phosphate. Mycorrhiza will actually uptake it and redirect it into plant cycles and get it out of the water. It also breaks down all the crazy chemicals that we have floating around in the ecosystem. I won't get into the watershed where I live, but just like the watershed here, it's in a lot of trouble. And same story of why where you live, this watershed is in trouble, our watershed's in trouble. This is a study that the service that I helped facilitate did with UVM, and we basically focused on working with the fungi to try to remediate E. coli, because there's too much E. coli, because farms don't have support to manage their manure. And we found that we actually did decrease the E. coli. However, we have nutrient questions. There's a lot of questions about nutrient cycles. So there's a lot we don't know, but we do know fungal mats work, but we know less than we do know. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but there's implications where this can help with stormwater design and rain gardens and riparian buffers. And we have a couple projects going on in Colchester, in Castleton, and hopefully Shelburne Farms if we can figure out the funding trail. I encourage everyone here, and I imagine a lot of you already do, partner with the fungi, go to the forest, listen to them. They're waiting, they're our elders. Develop relationships with them. Fungi language is different than plant language, but it's similar, requires us to be humble and listen. I already mentioned all these things we can do with buffers, mycorrhizae fungi. There's so many industrial agriculture point source places that need it, and stormwater runoff, and large-scale farms that could benefit. The youth and the public need to know about it. Textbooks have like one paragraph about soil, maybe a line about fungi. And then research, like everyone here is a citizen science. We need more people on deck. Mycology is actually like a very new science, which is like kind of ridiculous when you think about how old they've been here. So we need like everyone on deck. And there's another fellow here, Jesse, I think, who grows a lot of mushrooms. And we have a group here, Myconode, and we have a lab and lots of resources. We'd love you to come join us. It's open to everybody. These are a couple of great resources to get both products and education. These are a couple books, and if you want any scientific articles, I could fill your inbox, so feel free to be in touch. And we don't have time for questions because we want to hear from Juan, I think, right? So thank you. Sorry. Oh, and there's a farmer survey.
Well, I set one up. Will you do that?
Okay, one last thing is that we have a survey. We're trying to get a SARE grant for one of our projects. This is for farmers, and I know farmers have to fill out a lot of surveys, but this is short, and it's just to find out what you need for support to learn more about implementing microremediation projects on your land. So if you would be so kind as to use it, to fill it out, it'd help us when we write our SARE grant to say, see, there's a need for this. So there's a stack of surveys up here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this whole series. This is amazing. I want to thank God for choosing a picture of me 15 years ago. And I also want to say that to Jessica that I've been doing research with 8 sources of compost, and I'm looking at fungi and bacteria, and we'll talk more about it, but interesting results about the amount of fungi and bacteria in different sources of compost. Basically went from commercial to homestead, residential, dairy, sheep compost, two beef farms, and amazingly, residential and Johnson Sioux, which is a new to some form of making compost, were the ones that have the most bacteria and fungi. Okay, so thank you for having me. Today I'm going to talk about what does farming with nature mean, and I'm kind of getting into deep water here because I'm going to tell a story about one of my mentors, one of my professors when I was living in Brazil, and I did my college there. He was one of the pioneers in rotational grazing in the Americas. And I want to start with a provocative question. You know, can you read in the back? So, what is the difference between these 2 photos? This and this. 10 seconds.
Is the second one a plow?
Mining and
Fundamental differences.
Scale.
you get a lot more done with the tractor.
Petroleum powder, what else?
Scale.
Scale, okay, what else?
Sustainability. Manure.
Yeah.
Returning.
All good.
Intensity.
We have
Animal
a
usage.
300 horsepower tractor versus a 1 horsepower manual plow. And what is the difference? Energy? Yeah, all right, all right. And I will say that the one that is missing is the time to plow the area. Okay, these can plow 100 acres or more in one day. Okay, versus these beautiful horse here. Okay, so by doing that, what are we doing? We are disturbing the soil. We are turning the soil and making it enhancing soil respiration. And when we do that, we free carbon, just like a kid loses a balloon into the air. Okay, so the faster we do it, the more soil we lose, the more carbon we lose, and when we disturb the carbon cycle, we disturb the water cycle, and we disturb the nitrogen cycle and other biogeochemical cycles. Okay, I don't want to get into jargon here, but so this is the symbol. And as Kat, and I must mention that I'm using some of the photos that you used, or some of the pictures that you use in your presentation, just by chance, we're all on the same page, basically. But I wanna, can you guys hear me? Is the microphone working?
It just got turned on.
What else?
I've just been wiggling it.
Try it now.
Yep, there you go.
Hello, great. So today is agriculture, so I'm not gonna add more than what Jess and Kat said, but basically, in order to produce food, we need to clear an area. So we slash and burn, okay? We provide a packet of, irrigation, silos, we dry the seeds, we commercialize. And the problem with that is that we're not producing, with this model here, we're not producing food for humans. We're producing food for animals and for storing as a resource in case we run out of food. But today we produce more than double of the food that the world needs. So we're good on that. We could take a break and maybe slow down a little bit, because this picture here in Brazil, I counted about 28 combines, and they are harvesting soy, not corn. And there are machines, no-till drilling, the next season. In Brazil, they can do sometimes 3 crops in a year, okay? Because of the climate and amazing soils that were forest before. And most of this food goes to feed animals in confinement, okay, which is cruel. Using cheap fossil fuels and leaving behind contaminated water that we can't drink or swim or fish. And guess what? We subsidize all that and produce, very cheap, fast food with that. So this is a model that is not sustainable. And I'm gonna repeat some concepts that were said by Kat, but this is not a basketball, this is a grain of sand. The next one here is a silt grain. And this dot here is a clay. So very distinct sizes. Again, topsoil, full of life, predators, rhizosphere. You heard those concepts before. Rhizosphere can amplify the reaches of the roots, and it interconnects, like Jessica was saying. But today, we're living in an unprecedented crisis. Why? Because we're more people, therefore there's less land per capita, land per person, okay? And we are losing soil at an unprecedented rate. 2,400 tons per second. It's like every second, okay? And it's not me who's saying this, it's FAO, and it's very old, it's like 10 years old or more, okay? And we are desertifying the earth at a rate of 1,300 hectares per hour. Okay, this is no joke, okay? So it's like losing a Costa Rica-sized country every year. But not only that, every 11 hectares of soil are still under expanding cities every hour in Europe. Okay? So I don't want to scare you with this, I just want to bring reality here. This is a crisis, you know, we have many civilizations that disappear because they didn't take care of the soil. And what are the relationships between soil and health? For instance, some ecosystem services provided by soil. So cyanobacteria, which can be a culprit of in some cases, produces about 50% of the oxygen and is indirectly responsible for the other 50%. Some microbes make antioxidant. Some microbes trigger neuron formation. Some microbes break down calcium oxalate, and that means if you have kidney stones, you probably have a deficient microbiome, so on and so forth. So those are benefits from soils to human health. So we have been mining these soils, and we learn a lot from the times of the Great Depression, where there were dust bowls in this country and in many other cities in the world. But dust bowls still exist today in many countries, like Australia, like in countries in Africa, there are dust bowls, you know, sometimes weekly. So that's soil blowing away from their place because there's no cover, okay? So you can look at soil work as soil mining. So we are mining for nutrients. And there's a metric that says that ever since the end of the Second World War, we have been losing minerals and vitamins at 1% per year in fruits and vegetables. Okay? Pretty dramatic. When you see big apples or big fruits, they probably contain the normal macro elements which make possible for them to grow well, but they may not have the trace elements that are important for many body functions, like hormone formations, many other functions and processes in the body. And so, as such, you know, we are reaching several planetary limits, such as climate change, nitrogen use, biodiversity loss at unprecedented rates. And we are losing biodiversity at a very high rate, about 1,000 times higher than the background rate. Okay, and I wanted to bring this this slide that shows the evolution. It shows price indexes in percent, and these are years, 1970s through 2015. And look at the fertilizer price versus food price index. They're almost identical. So that means we have a heavy dependence on fertilizers, and when one goes up, the other one goes up too. And that's a bad habit, and I'm going to show why it's a bad habit, okay? I think as this slide is misplaced, I want to start with this slide first. In 1960, Dr. Piner Machado was my he was my mentor in the 90s when I did agronomy. Okay, but he was the first one of the first one, he was the second one to start a rotational grazing in Brazil, and maybe in the Americas. Okay, he bought a farm that was that had sand soil, not sandy soils. Okay, these were the soils before he started. After running animals through these fields, all the soils started to get covered. And can someone tell me what are these bumps here?
Manure.
Manure, urine. They're called ghost patches. This is 5 years later, okay? And because he was an academic, he measured his soils, and he looked at organic matter. So in 1959, 0.19. This is extremely low amounts of organic matter. Phosphorus, soluble phosphorus, less than 1 ppm. Total phosphorus, not available at that time. Potassium, K, 2.15. 1993, this went up almost 8 times. And phosphorus went up 16 times, and potassium went up 33 times. And then they measure again in 1999 and compared to his neighbor here. And his neighbor was still doing continuous grazing versus rotational grazing. Now, rotational grazing, you move animals fast from one pasture to the next pasture. How many farmers are in this audience? Right. 2. Hey, Jen. Great, 3. Awesome. So you move animals daily, and you put them in a relatively small area, and you change them, and the area rests until they come back. Rest in a dynamic way. Depending on the time of the season, it rests for 14 days to 40, 60 days sometimes. And that way you occupy the same area for 5 or 6 days in a year, basically. Okay? The thing is, all this happened without adding fertilizer, so where does the extra phosphorus and potassium come from? That's the question. And, oops, hold on. And then I'm going to talk about nature's secrets, and I'm going to dare to talk about these 4 ecosystem processes that tells you that we can farm with nature using process-based agriculture instead of input-based agriculture. Okay. So go on here. So soil processes. You didn't have this slide, but basically, every time we disturb the soil, we are really destroying the habitat of many microorganisms, micro and macroorganisms. I remember when my grandfather used to plow the land. He plowed the same land every year. At the beginning, lots of birds would come and eat bugs and worms, etc. And I noticed, after many years that no birds would come because there's no life in that soil. Okay, and his yields went down and down and down. Everything is interconnected. So, Dr. Piner Machado said that he started establishing a theory for why his soils went up in these elements without adding fertilizer. So he came up with biostenosis, which is a dynamic development of soil life only if the soils are not disturbed. Okay, and he came up with that theory before 2004. So every time you move the soil, you destroy those connections, those interactions between those organisms, and you become dependent on external inputs. Okay, so I'm going to skip this slide because Jess and Kat already spoke about it. The second theory was the trophobiosis, which was coined by Chabouzot in 1980s. And trophobiosis is a mix of three words. Tropho means food, bio, life, and cis, development. So basically, the development of life via food, basically. Makes sense, right? And he wrote a book, Healthy Crops, A New Agricultural Revolution, and basically the gist of it is that healthy plants, or plants grown in healthy soils, they grow complex substances that Jerry Bernetti used to call them funny proteins. Okay, those are complex substances which offer a barrier to pathogens. Okay, so pathogens, on the other hand, are a few insects, a few organisms that have they lack enzymatic capacity to attack plants that grow in healthy soils. Okay, they need enzymes, but they don't have enzymes. They don't have all the enzymes needed to attack those plants. But they will attack plants with highly soluble sap, which are the plants that drink soluble fertilizer, you know, synthetic fertilizer, okay? Go? Okay. And then the third process was the ethylene oxygen cycle, which was coined by Widdowson in 1993, Australian. And this happens in the microsites, which are the soil pores where root hairs live and absorb nutrients. And basically, he said that in these micropores, there are sometimes oxygen and water, and when there's oxygen, there are aerobic organisms, aerobic bacteria, and with plant activity, these aerobic microsites get oxygen depleted. So these microorganisms go dormant. When they go dormant, anaerobic bacteria wakes up and releases ethylene. By releasing ethylene, iron goes from ferric, insoluble, to ferrous, soluble, loses one charge. And guess what? It frees other metals like phosphorus, potassium, calcium. Okay? Droplets of nutrients. So here we have three types of soil. Soil sponge, middle of the road, and a break, basically. So, yeah. So soil needs pores in order to accomplish these important processes. And then the fourth, transmutation of elements with low energy, coined by Kerbrand, Louis Kerbrand, a French person, which means low energy nuclear reactions can transform nature elements into different ones. So you can turn carbon into gold. That's what he's saying. Okay? Or Bibrian, another French scholar, studied the papers of Kerbrand, and he said that biology is not only a chemical process, but also a nuclear one. Basically, elements with the right soil conditions, with the healthy soils, are able to change into other elements. And as bizarre as it may seem, this is the foundation for cold fusion, basically, transforming some elements into other elements. It's a theory, but it makes sense. So some examples of these: transmutation of silica into calcium. There was an experiment that Kerbrand did with chickens. He fed 1 pound of oats, and which was high in potassium and low in calcium. And when these chickens laid eggs, the eggs had 5 times the amount of potassium. And he said, "Oops, what happened here?" So another experiment done by a Japanese scholar, Mizuno, transmutation between from sodium into potassium. So he seeded some fungi, inoculated into 100 grams of sand and clay medium with 0.006 grams of potassium oxide. And after 72 hours, he harvested 36 grams of these inoculated fungi, and he measured the potassium, and the potassium was 1.58 grams, 300 times more. How can it be? So where does the extra phosphorus in potassium came from? He thinks is this process here that is responsible for the extra amount of potassium, because he didn't add anything. Basically, and I'd like to finish with the soil health principles, because they support all these processes. Manage more by disturbing less, basically. Diversify crop diversity to get above and below ground carbon. Grow living roots as much as you can, and keep the soil covered as much as possible, so that it's an armor to the surface, regardless of the use of moisture, etc. And I'd like to leave you with this quote, just to thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Thanks, Jess. That was great. So we went a little over, all of us, I think, on our presentations, because we just love to talk about this stuff. So sorry about that, but I hope you enjoyed the information. And we have 20 minutes officially left. I'm happy to stay longer if people want to stay past 8:30. But at this point, this is when we need to get to know each other. I don't want anyone leaving the room without knowing who was here, because we live together, we face a climate emergency together, and together we have to fix this mess. So if we all just get up and don't know who each other are, how can we do that? So please stand up and make a circle with your chairs. As best you can. As best you can, circle. Circle up. Oh, what a nice big circle. So what I'd like to do now, we don't have enough time for Q&A. We never do. If I had planned 4-hour evenings, you guys probably wouldn't have come. So we're keeping it short and packing it in, and we want to stay connected as we move forward. So what I'd like to do now is have us go around, say who you are, where you're from, and then share with us either something you were moved by, hopefully related to tonight's presentation, and maybe leave us with a question that probably will not get answered. But we have note takers that are keeping track of all your comments and questions, and all of these comments and questions help us to guide what we're going to do next. So your question will not ultimately go unanswered. It's going to help us shape what do we need to do to help prepare our community to start acting toward the resilient future that we need, rather than waiting. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So let's introduce ourselves. I'm Kat, and I'm totally inspired that you're all here. It really means so much, and it means that we're onto something and that we have great energy. And every time we do this, I'm so inspired by the people who show up, the skills that you bring with you, the knowledge, the passion, the connections, and I leave feeling like, we got this. We can do this.
Hi everyone, I am Vanessa Brown, formerly of Bethel and currently of Montpelier. And what else am I supposed to share, Kat?
A statement or a question, what you're feeling after all this, or?
Yeah, well, I really respect soil scientists and really interested in learning more about fungi. I've always been interested but haven't really spent a lot of time learning about it, so I really appreciated Jess's presentation tonight.
My name is Ronnie Salter. I live in Randolph. I don't live on a farm, and I did live on a tree farm for a long time.
Can you just point that at your mouth?
Yes, but that's what gets it all fuzzy. That's very loud.
Well, we want to hear you.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Seiler from Burlington, and I'm inspired by all the people in the room, and also by the feeling that I don't have to figure this out alone. That is a huge relief.
My name is Jesse Markson. I'm living in White River Junction right now. I think one of the main things that really inspires me at the moment is just the fact that mycorrhiza is one of the dominant contributors to soil carbon. And I guess my open question is, how can we continue to manage land and perennial food-producing ecosystems while cultivating these fungal partners to maximize soil carbon sequestration?
My name is Keith Walsh. I live in Thetford Center. In my journey of starting to understand what's going on in the soil, the first person that I reached out was Kat Buxton. And the couple of years, I would say now, 3, 4, 5 years after reading Dee Dee's book is what turned me on to the whole thing. Really so incredibly inspired by the information that I've learned, and really am feeling incredibly hopeful in understanding that the speed at which we can turn around some of these things that we've been degrading is really feasible and within our grasp, not just because of the volume of people in here, but because Mother Nature works that well.
Cassidy Murphy of South Royalston. I totally was inspired by all the science, and really got into that part. My question would be is, how do you share that information with people who aren't so much into the science, and to be able to teach them to do things that are simple?
Hi, I'm Tammy Jo. I live in South Royalton. And I'm just really excited about having conversations with my landlady about what we can do in her yard.
Jess Carlotto, Montpelier. Definitely learned some new things about soil processes tonight that I think I'm integrating into what I thought I already knew. And also picking a lot about land management and what drives land management decisions and how to kind of get there from here.
My name is Carol Montgomery. I also live in Montpelier, and I learned a lot this evening. I've been a gardener of vegetables and flowers and fruit trees for many, many years, but now I live in a condo, and we have a small yard, and I, like Tammy Jo, am wondering how I can convince my fellow neighbors to be as enthusiastic as I am to not have the lawn mowed and make it all plants.
Hi, I'm Lynn Wild. I'm from Montpelier also. It is really good to see this many people interested in this topic. I cannot tell you. Hey, is that Jen?
Hi, Jen. Across the country to find my neighbors. I was really glad to hear Kat talk about Dirt to Soil, Gabe Brown. I brought this book. I'm donating it to the cause here, so it's here. I gave it to Jesse Markson a few minutes ago. And if you haven't had a really easy introduction to regenerative agriculture, this is a fabulous book. And it's got so much great economics and science. And
My first ever book on tape.
really? Oh. Well, we put it in the Montpelier Library, hopefully. I gave it to them yesterday, but I give it to everybody I know, so I'm hoping to saturate the public with it. So, anyway, my question is, working on the Montpelier Tree Board in Montpelier, obviously, there's a lot of focus on dealing with invasives, including Norway maple and crazy snake worms, and of course emerald ash borer. And I just wonder if, and this is really a philosophical and one of those life questions, if we were so focused on taking care of regenerating our soil and making it healthy, would we really need to deal with invasives? Could we just kind of just let them be what they're doing and we would get the soil taken care of? So that's the question I'm living in right now.
I'm Shelby Gerard. I live up the road in Brookfield. I also work for rural Vermont in Montpelier. And I must say that I'm really impressed both tonight and at the other event within this series that I've attended, that folks came from quite a distance to be here, and I think that's really special. I come to a lot of events in Randolph, and I think mostly it tends to be Randolph, Brookfield, Braintree folks, so this is really very cool. I also wanted to say that I just really appreciate the upbeat nature of these events, and that they're very hopeful, because it's really easy to get mired down in the gloom and doom when talking about such big issues that we're all facing. And it feels good to leave these events with just with hope. So I thank you, Kat, and everyone for that.
Hi, I'm Laura Simon. I live in one of the villages of Hartford. It's called Wilder, and I've mostly been a social worker, doing organizing most of my life, and a little bit of music about the earth and teaching. And I've started doing some working on my friend's permaculture property. But learning about soil is new to me. I've been working on climate issues for a while, putting a lot into that. So it's good to see you all and think about that maybe soil is part of what we have to focus on to make some positive change.
Hi, I'm Stephen Marks, and I live in Stratford. And I guess the question I would have is that I've been growing vegetables for a long time, and I have about an acre of gardens, and I till. And it would be, I can't even imagine how I would garden not tilling. So, I mean, I would love to do all of this because I love the soil and I love the earth, but how do I do it?
No, I would use cardboard poison.
I'm Laurel Stevenson I'm Laurel Stevenson from Heartland, and I guess I'm inspired by how quickly we can get culture back where there was sterility before. And my question is, how do we get people to be not afraid of microbes?
My name is Kate, and I live in South Burlington right now. I'm originally from the Plymouth area of New Hampshire, and it's cool that this area has this kind of thing going on. I really appreciate it. Going off of what you said, I work in a hospital, and so it's like constantly like sanitizing and getting rid of like bugs and stuff, and I really like talking about how awesome they are.
Hi, I'm Sandy Demure. I'm from Heartland, and I can't wait to get myself a broad tube fork so that I'm not tilling so much.
disturbing things. I think that's what I'm getting clearer and clearer about. And I too have that question about invasives that was brought up, and there's so much talk about it, getting rid of them. And so I'd like to hear more about that.
Hi, my name is Jeff Corbett. I'm originally from Welland County, but right now I'm found living in Burlington. And first of all, I'd just like to say I'm grateful for this space to be here with all of you today. And my question would be, how can we reach those who are working like 3 jobs and apparently don't have a lot of time? Is this going to be available to them?
My name is Jess, and I'm living in Richmond right now. And the information about transmutation was very interesting, and curious to learn more about that. And also would love to talk to people about emerging natives or emerging plants that are called invasive. There's a great book by Dow, Ryan, Invasive Ecology, and stormwater design outside of schools. Just curious about children getting involved in that all over the state.
My name is Gary Gurr. I'm a farm boy from Illinois. I didn't realize how I was screwing up the soil by plowing the land. And I'm going to take a little credit for running what we call the honey wagon. It had the manure on it. I'm extremely impressed with the speakers tonight and the depth of their knowledge. I'm extremely impressed by the number of people, by the people here. I'm overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem.
Hi, my name is Patty Smith. I live in Buxton, and I see some of my neighbors here. Good to see you. Very excited about being here tonight and the fact that this group is looking at soil. I'm extremely concerned by the use of glyphosate products in the state, and we're owed reports on that usage, and the governor has yet to give us those reports. And how can we know even the scope of the problem if our reports, which are mandated by the legislature, are not being produced by the administration? So that's just kind of a shout out. Ask the governor to get those reports out. And when we're looking at soil, you just cannot avoid the issue of glyphosate. It kills the soil. You know, Monsanto has a patent for antibiotic for glyphosate because it kills everything. And so I really think that, you know, with the prices that conventional farmers are getting for milk and that whole financial crisis, I would just encourage anyone who has a heart for this issue to try to work on ways to get farmers to transition away from using Roundup because it kills. And I think the market is going to do that for us. Second court case has been found against them. Only 11,199 to go. So, you know, things are looking good there. But, you know, we live in a small state, and if just the people in this room would write the governor and say, where's that report on pesticide use in the state, we'd probably see a little action on it. So, good to see you guys.
Hi, David from Randolph. Like everybody else, I was really impressed with the wealth of material presented tonight. I'm glad the information is being transcribed. I'm not being a scientist. I got a lot of homework ahead of me just to try to understand this all a lot better. But great that more research is going on out there. Okay. Yeah, I look forward to the notes. I understand it better.
I'm Pam Overstrom, and I live here in town. And again, I see the magnitude of the problem, but I'm hopeful because of the work that is being done. So I go away hopeful.
My name is Gene Palte, and thank you for the three presenters. I thought they were awesome. And I think the quote that really got me was that very last quote that fellow had up there about what we know already keeps us from learning. I think in my case it's true. I'm a raised vegetable in the same spot on a farm with my wife for almost 30 years. And we're always trying to tweak things, and I'm really excited to learn about this mycelium stuff. Also, as a note, we've been experimenting with nematodes as to target a soil organism that we deem bad. And thanks a lot for putting this on.
My name is Jen Colby. I'm from Randolph as well. I'm a colleague of Juan's at UVM Center for Sustainable Agriculture. So a question that I sort of am hearing in the room is what actions can we take? And as a person who works with farmers a lot, I can certainly encourage folks, please change your backyards, but please buy from farmers that are treating the soil the way that you want the soil to be treated, because they need your help. And at the risk of sounding really self-serving, our farm is a mile away. We raise grass-based lamb, and we protect both the Ayers Brook and the White River, because we're in between both of those. So keeping the soil covered is pretty major in our book.
Could you say the name of your farm?
We're Howling Wolf Farm.
And Jean, could you just say the name of your farm?
We are a Tunbridge Hill farm.
Matt from Tunbridge, and I'm just interested in growing a bunch of fruit and nut trees pretty soon, and I just realized I needed to learn a little bit more about the soil, so this is kind of a good first step, but pretty interested in the concept of swales and hupoculture tonight as well.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Coolidge. I live here in Randolph, but we are going to be trying to get started with the Randolph Community Orchard. We're planning a diversified orchard, and also we have some property in Bethel that we've already started planting trees on, but our soil really does need help. So I was glad to learn about some of these options or the principles. And I guess my question would be, where can I get the presentations that Juan Alvez did? Because I would love, or just the references, I would love to delve into some of that a little bit more.
One question I'll answer.
Sure.
Make sure you sign up on the email list.
Okay, great.
And they'll be in the notes.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate really hearing that. My question is, we bought a property that is, let's say, 10% of the 40 acres is open pasture, and it's on the border of the 5 years on the road. My question is, this pasture was abandoned for maybe 30 years, something like that, 30, 40 years. And nobody lives there, nobody disturbs the soil, but the soil is treated. Like we planted an orchard that is starting to grow up now. Soon we try to introduce some animals to try to revitalize the soil. What happened besides Irene that I understand introduces a lot of invasive. We have monoculture of straw. Bedstraw. What's up?
Hi, I'm Megan, living in Tunbridge. I was very excited, particularly by Jess's presentation. I'm a mushroom forager, originally from Ohio, was a mushroom forager there as well. And I agree that we can all spend more time getting to know our fungal ancestors. I also have a similar question to, I can't remember your name, Jeff, about how we can
increase the access of this type of knowledge and experience to places elsewhere. I'm originally from Cleveland, and I can tell you that this is not how it is everywhere. And Vermont as a whole is definitely a pocket. And I wonder how we can increase the access to this in places like Cleveland where I'm from.
My name is Carol Gordon. I just moved to Congress as well. And yeah, I'm inspired by this fact that life is really made possible by this small layer of 6 inches, if it is 6 inches at all. And if you think about the short length of our small atmosphere here in the universe in which we all live, and I'm kind of shocked. My background is in biodynamic agriculture a little bit, and I'm kind of shocked how much we need science to tell us how important and vulnerable life is, and that we shouldn't degrade soil and stuff like that. It's been a topic since a few years now in my life, and I'm still shocked by that fact. And I think if we would more come back to like value-based system as already in those principles, then we might even get climate change deniers who would still are believers in religion and stuff. And what we really need is this cultural shift in which we like to work with the soil and don't run away from it. And I've been, of course, very inspired by Wendell Berry and that kind of thinking.
Hi, I'm Ty Cochran, and I live on a small farm in West Hartford. And I was hugely inspired today by a phone conversation that I had. I worked in the 70s and 80s. I lived in Montana and worked with a group that was promoting the use of renewable energy. We called it alternative energy back then. And I realized that I love learning this stuff. I think it's wonderful. It's just so encouraging. And I realize that it's a huge problem, and not everybody knows about it, and I want to spread the word like mad. I had this phone conversation today with some friends in Montana that I used to work with on renewable energy, and I asked them what they were doing, and this is what they were working on too. So I was very encouraged.
Everybody all together, thank you, Black Corinne. Is she back there? Thanks for dinner.
Thanks, Mike.
Capturing the moment. Mike Bald, Royalton. I do invasive species management without chemical methods from Lake Champlain to Cape Cod. Been doing it since 2010. Got the inspiration from Massachusetts. I always mention that. This was a brilliant evening. Thank you to all the travelers and presenters. Be safe on the way home. Went to the Pesticide Advisory Council meeting today. I was the only member of the public there. That says something. I did submit to the leader of the council, where are the reports on pesticide usage that stopped in 2013? We've got 5 years of data. I was in the military. I was in the Forest Service. You never have enough people. You never have enough money to get the work done. You give me the numbers. Throw them out there on the floor. You give me the numbers. I'll bring you the people for free. And we will make 5 years of reports for free. That's free labor. So, I mean, I see how many people are in this room. I told them I'd have 10 people. And if they put the numbers on the table or on the screen, whatever, we will make the reports that they don't have the people to work with. And they did say, yeah, well, that was cool. And they were receptive to that, although it was, they said, well, it's all about it. It's an IT issue. So now I have to go get my, they changed systems. But no, 5 years, that's not a legitimate excuse. And I think people have already asked tonight as well. If you want things to grow, I ask people this all the time. They tell me, what do I do about the knotweed? What do I do about this? I say, well, do you want things to grow here or not? Oh, yeah, we want things to grow. Well, then why would your first step in management be add toxin? I mean, that's why would you move backwards if you want to move forward? So I don't want to blah too much. Yeah, build soil. Ask your. I don't talk to the governor. You go talk to the Senate and the House Agriculture Committees, and ask them why, in the past 3 years of hearing from some guy from Royalton who makes a lot of noise, why do we not yet have a cure for Lyme disease so we can work the land without curling up a little ball at the end of the night because we can't move our bodies anymore? Why don't we have a cure for Lyme disease? And why do Vermonters burn, this is on us, why do we burn 40,000 piles of unwanted vegetation a year? I prune apple trees, and they always ask me, I'm going with this guy tomorrow in Woodstock, what do I do with the vegetation, Mike? Do I burn it? No, the planet's hot enough and you have kids. So all those branch tips, that's next year's future soil. 40,000 piles a year, I did the math. And that's something that this group can change. And people should get paid for not burning their branches. That's enough preaching from me.
I just want to point out the time as facilitator. We're 10 minutes over. Totally cool with me. That's it. Time check.
I'm Cap. I'm from Williamstown, home gardener, and really glad to be part of this group. I hear new concepts every week, and I just write down that little concept, and I go home and I do a little research on it, get more jazzed about it. But one thing I just wanted to put out is my friend Kai came and she lent me one of her books, and so the idea of sharing books and information that we all have resources at home that we could share with one another. So I would just like to encourage you, maybe we could figure out a way to communicate that and share.
My name is Karen, and I live in East Bethel. And I come every week, and every week I learn a little bit more, and it's starting to coalesce somewhere in there. And like has been said so many times, I'm really hopeful that so many people get it in.
I'm Brian Tokar from East Montpelier. I'm a climate activist and educator and have been gardening here in Vermont for about 35 years. And even though I was a pretty serious science geek in an earlier phase of life, my approach to gardening has been mostly more experiential and intuitive. And I'm just really inspired by the presentations tonight to think more about how to tie it all back together.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm from Randolph. Just an avid home gardener, looking to maybe potentially expand it into maybe a small farm. I'm still exploring that possibility. It's been really interesting seeing so many different people from all over the state, it seems like. I don't know that I really have the questions, just still kind of a lot to digest and think over. And thank you all for putting it together.
Hi, my name is Jael. I'm a farmer, organic vegetable grower in Worcester, Vermont. I've been farming for about 16 years. Know about a lot of this stuff for longer than that, and I still can't believe we're farming the way that we farm in the Midwest. And I know a lot of people mentioned invasive species, and that's the symptom of our industrial agricultural system when we're shipping food across the world back and forth. I'm dealing with an insect called sweet midge, which came from Eurasia several years ago. But I also work for 350 Vermont, and we're doing a climate walk April 5th through the 9th. Thanks. I'm all brain dead. And walking from Middlebury to Montpelier, and we're going to be highlighting some of these solutions along the way. I think Kat's going to come do a presentation, so hope some of you can join. Thanks.
My name is Carl. I'm the co-founder of Soil for Climate. We're honored to be one of the sponsors for the series. If anyone's interested in following this discussion at a global level, I encourage you to, if you're on Facebook, to join our Facebook group. We have over 10,000 members, over 100 countries around the world. So it's been very exciting to watch the emergence of communities around the world who are interested in these topics. I recently saw a talk by John Kemp of advancing eco-agriculture, and one point that he makes, which I found kind of revolutionary, is thinking that all insects are beneficials, and that when your plants are attacked by insects, it's nature's way of eliminating from the food supply plants that are not nutritious enough to be consumed.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Rule. I'm coming from Stratford. And I'm inspired by the soil and everything that's going on in there. It just blows me away to know about it. And I think you've done an amazing job at pulling this together, so thank you. And that, I want to echo, I guess, that feeling that this is how we need to change things, I think, is building these connections and biomimicking socially. And at the same time, I'm holding the despair of knowing the machine out there. And I work on trying to get decision makers to transition to renewable energy all over the country with, moms like organizing and showing up. And I see like how organized they are on the other side. And I hate to put it in those terms, but we are, I don't know how we stop the machine, because that image that you showed of the tilling, the scale, or look at the scale, right, of this room versus what's out there. And I guess, so that's my question, and I hate to be a downer.
All right, Debbie.
But it's a really important question. Maybe we don't need to fight directly, I don't know, but we,
yeah. This is a start. Yeah.
Just think of how small those microrhizae are and what they're able to do.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Usually not that good, but. My name's Nancy. I've got a small homestead outside of Bellows Falls, and I was really struck by the quote, was it you, Jess? If you screw it up, it's your responsibility to fix it. Yeah. So I'm sitting on this really, really lovely piece of land, and I don't want to screw it up, and what I don't know is driving me crazy, so thank you for this, because it helps me learn a little more. And there was a piece of my land in that slide going down the Connecticut River into the Long Island Sound after Irene, and followed by all of the knotweed that came in after it. So yeah, we've got forces outside of ourselves that are impacting our ability to care for our land, and this helps us know more about how to do that. So thank you.
Hi, Tatiana Schreiber. I live in Westminster West and have a little farmstead there too. And also try to teach about ecological agriculture, and also work for the Rich Earth Institute in Brattleboro. That's doing work on diverting urine from the waste stream and using it as a fertilizer. So I'm very interested in, I want to make a connection with Jess there, very interested in what I learned tonight about, or I want to learn a lot more about mycoremediation and all that sort of thing. Because I've always been very interested in soil and soil diversity and all of that stuff, but really understanding it better and what all these critters are doing and how they're doing it is really interesting to me. But something that's come up a lot, or come up in my mind a lot tonight, is this whole question of the relationship between scientific ways of thinking and other ways of knowing. As you mentioned, Jess, in your talk, how do we include all those ways of knowing together and speak across of those different ways? Because I think it's really interesting that the science, at least for me, is so fascinating, and I want to learn more, and that's a way that I really like knowing. But other people have other ways, and it doesn't work for them, and so how do we really cross those differences and bring them together? That's really interesting to me. And also, I just want to say I really appreciate what people have said. It sounds like there's kind of a shift going on in thinking about invasive species, and I'd really like to see us really change our way of thinking and talking about these plants that are just coming here, and it's not their fault. They're just like doing their thing. I don't want them to be blamed. I think we need to think about it, another way of thinking about that.
Hi, my name is Beth Champagne, and I used to live here, but I've been up in St. Johnsbury now for 20 years. And this is the most wonderful evening. This is the third time I've come, and I do intend to get back the next 2 times. I'm sitting directly across from my old neighbor in North Randolph and seeing lots of other people, either that I'm excited to listen to or that I know from one place or another. And Jen Colby up there told me last year that her sheep were able to get rid of all the so-called poison parsnip, which is really not poison, it's something to do with photosensitivity. Yep. And so, you know, when 7 Days ran that long article saying, oh, there's just nothing you can do about it, I was not impressed. Yeah, so it's just phenomenal, the people that are here tonight from so many different towns, and that we all care enough to show up and learn and get acquainted. My big takeaway for tonight, and this is pretty, well, it's sad and it's funny too, that this is the first time since I started reading all these books like Cows Save the Planet that teach you about soil. I'm going to hear Carl talk a few years ago. I think it was a 350 Vermont annual meeting at the Old Grange Hall in Montpelier. This is the first time that I really feel that I can get into my garden and not dig. It took me a long time.
I'm Steve Herbert, and I live in St. Johnsbury. I was really excited tonight to hear a subject talked about of biotransmutation, especially by a university professor.
Yeah, Juan, he's special.
Transmutation of one element into another. I would like to know what he knows about a similar phenomena, like what air plants do, taking elements in homeopathic amounts and multiplying them in quantity. Be really excited to hear that too at some point.
Thank you. Juan Alvez, your neighbor from Essex Junction. I want to say that I'm not impressed with the amount of people and the energy in this room, because after all, this is Vermont, and that's what we do. We get together to support a cause, and we really do it. So thank you, Kat, for hosting these, and for John as well, and everybody. One thing I want to say is need to take responsibility for what we do, and one of the ways that we can take responsibility is, I'd like to support what Jen said, my coworker. If we can we, the question I have is, can we think about buying one farm product per week, no matter what, from a different farm? I think we're going to be better off. Our farmers are going to be better off. We are facing a tremendous crisis right now in dairy. And the other side of the coin is that crisis can bring opportunities. And I see these groups popping up in different places as a great ferment for a change. And I'm hopeful, and it makes me proud to have chosen Vermont as my home place.
Good evening, my name is Nanto Jaramillo. I live here in Randolph, and I'm very impressed about learning all about soil and soil restoration. And I feel like that's the future of agriculture, and like we have to incorporate all these no-till methods into our agricultural practices. And yeah, I wish that we could learn how to grow in I feel like conventional agriculture has to evolve into like no-till methods and how to conserve the soil. That's it.
I am John from East Randolph. I want to say I'm grateful to Kat, Jesse, and
Juan for tonight's presentations. They were really terrific. And I want to make a plug for a free home orchard workshop in May at the Randolph Community Orchard up near Exit 4. It's sponsored by Bales Resilience University and Nico Rubin from the East Hill Tree Farm in Plainfield.
Hi, my name is Scott from Randolph, and I want to thank the Earth for putting up with us. And now that I know that the soil's alive, I'll have somebody else to talk to.
Hi, I'm Lauren from Richmond, technically still. And I just wanted to share a fact that I learned last week. I went to a conference on adding large woody debris to rivers. And there was this really interesting fact that came about, which was that beavers have effectively been removed from Vermont since 100 years before the first European settler came. So we actually have no idea what our landscape should look like. I think that that's really like mind-boggling to me, and I thought you guys would appreciate it. Thanks.
What did she say about it?
So Lauren has been taking notes for us for all this time. So if you're reading those notes or getting those notes, it's highly due to the fact that Lauren has been typing the entire time. Thank you all so much. This is really great. Our next one is April 10th. That one is about resilience. We'll have Simon Dennis, Mindy Blank, Henry Harris, and Chris Wood as our speakers. And then the last one of the series is April 24th, and that's about cooling the planet with water. Carl Tiedemann here is going to be on the panel, along with Henry Swayze, Judith Schwartz, who wrote the book, Cows Save the Planet, and Jan Lambert, who also wrote a book that's in our raffle, and she's a wonderful person. You'll hear more about beavers from Jan. And May 8th, that is so important that you come on May 8th, because that's where we're going to start getting to work. And we're going to keep working, and keep working, and keep working. We have to keep showing up. We have to.
Didn't you say we were in Montpelier May 8th?
Oh no, May 8th is here. May 8th is here. But you might be confused with another thing I'll tell you about. So there are so many events going on. You should, if you have events that you know about and you want other people to know about, please write them down. We'll make sure they get in the calendar that we share with everyone. But just today, we booked the State House lawn for May 6th at 11 a.m. and Vandana Shiva is going to come and speak. So, save the date. It's a Monday. And yeah, so that's happening. 350 Vermont, I just want to put in another plug for their climate walk. And also, check out their website. They have so many cool events happening right now, really focusing a lot on solutions. They're doing great work, so plug into them. Resilience University also is a really great place to learn. There are lots of small towns doing sort of skill shares right now. Support those. Those are your neighbors sharing their skills, and that's what we need to get out of this mess. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again. If you want to help out by putting a chair away, that would be fantastic.